Bé, ara tenim una xerrada d'una persona del Consell Científic de la Càtedra Smart City. En Peter Nijkamp és un professor en economia regional i urbana. Professor Nijkamp is Professor in Regional and Urban Economics and Economic Geography at the Free University of Amsterdam. He has a broad expertise in the area of public policy, services planning, infrastructure management, environmental protection. According to REPEC, one of the references in economics, he belongs to the top 20 of well-known economists worldwide. Among other things, he was awarded the most prestigious scientific prize in the Netherlands, the Spinoza Award. We are very lucky to have him here. We live in a new epoch in the geographic history of mankind. Virtual flows of information in and between cities are more important than traditional physical appearances, but they are less visible. Cities tend to become cyber places. New data techniques become new urban management tools with various stakeholders involved. For example, urban Facebooks and urban dashboards. All this will revolutionize complex urban systems, and indeed, it will prompt emergence of smart cities. So please, Professor Nijkamp, come on stage. Okay, thank you very much for accepting to give a talk in TEDxUdG.
Welcome, my dear friends, to this particular city of Girona, a city which wants to be a smart city. What does it mean to be a smart city? A smart city means to give us a better life. More formally, it wants to perform in terms of the economy, in terms of ecology, in terms of social capital, in terms of transportation, and in fact, it wants to perform better than any other city in the world. And this, of course, is a fantastic idea. At the same time, does it make a difference? And what is needed to get a really smart city? Worldwide, this whole movement towards smart cities is very much instigated by one important foundation. We need intelligence. We need more ICT, information communication technology, and particularly we need more digital technology so as to improve the performance of our cities. Does that make a difference? And is it possible? Let me give a simple example on this particular city where we are tonight, Girona, a fantastic ancient city center, constrained by its history. Is it possible to remodel the whole city so as to give it a higher performance? Many of our cities, in fact, are constrained by history, by political conditions, by real estate, by built environments, and so on. So the goal, the dream to have a smart city, and the action which is needed to get a smart city is not always directly compatible. If you build a new city, the Chinese cities, for instance, much easier. But if you have to remodel an existing city, it's a rather harsh task. What I would like to present to you this evening is the idea that, first of all, we need more intelligence. But second, in the future, we will not only have the visible, material, physical cities. My idea is, in the future, we will have more and more invisible cities. And let me try to outline this, because my final argument is that in the future, we will live more in invisible cities than in visible cities. And let me explain this paradox to you. Cities exist by social capital, by people living together, friends, etc. But there's one important element. which has dramatically changed our view on cities and the reality of cities in the past decades. To start with, our world has nowadays some 6.5 billion people. It will move soon, within 35 years approximately, to 9.5 billion people. We have to accommodate more than 3 billion people, which is half of the current world population, in the next 35 years. How can we accommodate all these people? There's an important trend. Together with this rapid increase in the world population, we also see a rapid urbanization. More and more people are moving into urban areas, not particularly cities in a narrow sense, but urban agglomerations. 200 years ago, some 20% of the total world population was living in cities. Nowadays, since 2007, it's more than 50%. And in most of the OECD countries, it's above 70, 75, and in some cases even 80%. An uninterrupted move toward more urbanization, and even, as another trend, a faster urbanization. Mexico City, Sao Paulo, Mumbai, Shanghai, it doesn't matter. All these cities, rapid increases of population volumes. Not only a few millions like Paris or London, but tens of millions. And there is perhaps no end to the size of these cities. Why should there be size, by the way? So that brings us into an interesting question. Why are all these people moving into cities? Isn't it nicer with some nostalgic feelings to be somewhere in the countryside, in rural areas? Well, here on this slide, you find, in fact, a very simple solution to this secret. In the city, you are together, you work together, you have close vicinity, you have agglomeration advantages, and you are stronger than when you are alone. Otherwise, you better stay in a rural area. There is, of course, a whole range of theoretical contributions to the explanation of this, and I'm not going through it tonight. But there, of course, are obvious reasons why people would like to cluster together. In the ancient period, people had to be protected behind the walls of the city because the enemies might come. Later on, after the Industrial Revolution, you need handicraft, and you need people to work together. You had central places where people were collectively working in office buildings, etc. So there's an obvious necessity why people move towards cities. And I would argue people do not move to cities out of social reasons, not because they love their neighbors. It's economic necessity. It's all about the economy. The economy dictates that in a city it's better to live because you can do more in the city than in any other settlement pattern of the world. So this is in fact a rather simple statement. A statement which of course may be questioned. And even among the French philosophers, this already has been questioned also when the city of Paris came up as a major agglomeration. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he was talking about cities as the abyss of the human species. But at the same time, we have there also Albert Camus. And he said, well, you see, if you really want to be alone, go to the city, because that's the only place where you can nowadays find a desert. The city can be, for individuals, a mental desert. You can be alone in the city, more alone than in any village. So there are all kinds of contrasting views, of course, on the city. But all in all, whether we like it or not, urbanization is a destiny. And that does not necessarily mean that all of us would love cities. If I ask my students from Mexico City why they are living in Mexico City, they would not say, well, we love Mexico City, but they would say, well, despite the pollution, despite the criminality, etc., we would like to live there because that's where we have educational facilities, that's where the jobs are, and we do not want to be poor in our small villages. And that's the same secret for India, that's the same for China, and that has been the driving force of city formation all over the world. That has led to policies to stimulate even city growth. China recently has decided that it will accommodate 80 million people in one mega city, which is formidable. It's a huge volume of people. You can only do this if you have all the technology in place, sophisticated technology, and that is the only secret to accommodate all these people. Sophisticated transport and what have you. It does not mean that Europe is on a losing edge. Europe also has what sometimes is called in geography a blue banana. There's also some 80 million people, but never planned. We didn't plan this carefully in Europe. It just happened out of economic forces. The same in the United States. The east coast of the United States, starting from Boston up to Pittsburgh, etc. Again, some 80 to 100 million people. Unplanned, certainly in the United States, totally unplanned. But nevertheless, these agglomeration forces apparently are very, very strong. Now, this is where we are with our city formation nowadays. But this is a very complex organism to manage. In terms of transportation, in terms of social amenities, in terms of the ecology, energy provision, pollution, and the whole range of social inclusion, social segregation issues. Cities are very complicated things. We have, in contrast to the past nowadays, enormous volume of information on cities. We know more about cities than ever before. If you just take Google Earth, you know exactly where to find your home. You can even get a nice picture of your home. If you are in the car, you have a route guidance or a TomTom system, so you can find out your way. GPS tells you exactly where you are and where you should go. So we have more information than ever before. And one would say, well, to govern a smart city means you have to use all these sophisticated information tools. And these tools, and that's my point which I would like to make tonight, in fact, imply that there's a lot of information available somewhere in the cyberspace, somewhere maybe above us, we don't know where it is, but it's somewhere. Flows of information, not only on where we are, but also on economic values, banking information, and many other things which we would like to know. The volume of these flows is huge, megabytes and megabytes and megabytes, but the value of these flows we hardly know. That's the problem. And my argument is that, in fact, to govern cities and to know what cities mean in the future, we have to map out these flows. And of course, we get a few more and more ideas nowadays. This small machine, a smartphone, is a small computer in itself. But my telephone provider knows exactly tonight that I'm here in Girona and that I'm at, 7:30 or so. I'm more or less at this moment, any second, I'm here and I'm walking back and forward. They know exactly what I'm doing. That's also they know for all of you. So there is, and that's not only the only one, we have, of course, we have cameras in the city, we have sensors, we have all kinds of GPS. We know everything. If you go shopping, of course, if you use a credit card, it's the same. So we can map out, in principle, the behavior of anyone in the city. You say, well, that's the visual representation of a visible city. But increasingly, and now it comes, we move toward a different type of behavior. Because in the past, we were talking to our neighbors, and I was talking to you, and I was talking to you, you were talking to me. And we can map out all these interactions, of course, with sophisticated information technology. But increasingly, we do not talk to our neighbors anymore. The intensity of interaction is not anymore with our neighbors in the same city. Through Facebook, through Twitter, what have you, internet. We communicate more with the rest of the world, very intensive information flows, much more than with our neighbors. So the very essence of a city, we said, well, the city was born out of social capital. We sit together in the same city, the same street, and we do business with the same people in the same street or the same district, the same city. It's totally gone. We order books through Amazon.com. We don't know where it is, but somehow we get the books and we order shoes and clothes, etc. It's a totally different type of information flow. And that makes essentially cities almost redundant. Because the intensity of our interaction with the outer world is much higher than with the inner world. And despite the fact that cities are there, and they will be there because of purely physical productivity reasons, because on a bigger scale you can do things more efficient than in a smaller scale, simple economic law, but in the longer run there will be an absolute tendency where people realize that the intensity of their behavioral flows is somewhere else. So that's what I would call the invisible cities. The intensity of interaction determines what kind of cities will be there in the future. I would call them invisible cities. They can be space specific, they can be, of course, group specific, and we may have multiple layers of invisible cities, but the type of interaction which we have is completely different. That also means that if we look into the digital background of new cities, that the digital technology will be decisive for the type of cities, and I cannot believe that traditional cities will survive forever. We see increasingly also from a scientific perspective more and more interest in internet, geography, and what have you, so studying all these flows. And the interesting question is now, if you do this, whether an analysis of internet flows and tweets, what have you, whether this would be a different pattern than the normal physical pattern of physical movements between people in the city or between cities. Now, that leads to an interesting and new type of challenging research. One of the things, for instance, which may be an implication is that whereas in the past physical movement would lead to the need to use digital technology and social science research and planning research in this field, that in contrast to the traditional perspective, that the digital world is determining what is happening in the physical space. I'll give you one example. Foursquare, and I guess some of you will be familiar with Foursquare. So Foursquare means if you go to a restaurant or a museum or so, you can, through your iPhone, you can check in. And all your friends all over the world know that at this point in time, you are in this and this place, and if they want to see you, they can see you there. If they do not want to see you at all, they shouldn't go there, and so on. So that means that the digital technology, in fact, determines the physical movements of people. It's just the opposite compared to what we have seen in the past. Now, these are very important things also for, of course, determining and deciding on your own trip behavior. But in this whole new urban world, we also have many more opportunities. And what I would like to do in the last few minutes of my speech is just to refer to what I've called here the old Italian Roman model of a city, the urban piazza. The piazza was somehow the center where all the actions came together, commercial, social, economic, etc. And we could try to map out all these forces and make them as part of an integrated pattern for the future of our cities. And modern technology allows us to, in fact, almost create our own cities. These could be virtual cities even. But the city will always be there because of its communication intensity, but it does not necessarily mean the exact city as we know it nowadays. I cannot avoid just quoting here a fantastic sentence from a book from Italo Calvino, Invisible Cities. And when after a long trip, when he moves from Venice toward China, at the end he comes in China, and then he makes at the end, he makes a very interesting statement. When a man rides a long time through wild regions, he feels the desire for a city. It's not the city perhaps in itself, but it's the social environment. But nowadays the social environment could of course be different. And these social environments differ also for all our cities. And that's where Europe has a completely different constellation than any other place on earth, because American cities are more or less identical. Modern Chinese cities are more or less identical. But European cities are diverse. If you compare Stockholm with Rome or with Barcelona, there's nothing in common, except that they all are beautiful. And that means there is not a panacea to solve all these issues. The solutions we have to go through in order to accommodate people, to make them happy in our cities. These challenges will, of course, be great, but also difficult. One of the instruments we have tried to develop in the past couple of years is to use some sort of a Facebook mechanism for designing new cities. Sometimes virtual cities, but you can ask through Facebook type of technology how people feel about cities, whether they like it or not. And at the end, they can design their own cities. We have recently applied this to an old industrial area in the city of Amsterdam, dilapidated, but you can ask stakeholders, create some images, combine the images, you can do 2D, 3D images, etc., it doesn't matter. But at the end, people and stakeholders, business firms, residents, and so on, they could create their own cities. And then you can discuss all these images. So it also means that for building sometimes these virtual cities, that the modern digital technology helps us to create also a different type of democracy. More interactive, more participatory democracy. And then you can do all kinds of strengths, weakness analysis on different cities and different images you have created. You can discuss this, so you can put this on the computer. You can show this. And as at the end of the day, and that is also one of the projects we are trying to develop for smart cities, if you want to be smart, you have to define what is smart. Sustainable, intelligent, whatever, it doesn't matter, but you have to define it. And that's where I think this new idea of urban dashboards, as a consequence of the use of urban Facebooks for an urban facelift, could be very interesting. Because if you drive a car, the car is a very complicated animal. It has an engine, but no one knows how it functions. It has all kinds of small computers. No one knows, or hardly anyone knows how they function. It doesn't matter. Because as long as you have a few meters and you look at the meters, you can control the car. Now, this, I think, is one of the great challenges for the future of our cities. Very complex animals, very complex, and we cannot understand all the mechanisms, even not on a second-by-second and minute-by-minute basis, how we move and what we are doing, where we are building houses, infrastructure, cars, etc., trains, airplanes, very complicated. If we can reduce this in an intelligent way, to the same extent as we reduce the complexity of a car into a dashboard, it would be of enormous help for urban policy making. That would also be helpful for the future. If this is a visible city, perfectly fine. If it is an invisible city, through which we would be in contact with many people, and maybe in the future most of us will move around, spend a year there, half a year there, etc., we might lose our sense of home, but the social interaction, that's the very essence of a city, will always be there. And even when we have to live in an invisible city in the future, I still would like to welcome you then in the invisible city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very, very much for this enticing talk, because really we have enjoyed very much. I just beg your pardon to ask you a small question. We are in Girona. I belong to the University of Girona, and the University of Girona and the Girona Connect. They are connected, for example, to the Cathedral, Smart City Cathedral. So this kind of university, with university. Do you have any idea for us, for the city, related to these invisible cities, or what you have talked? Any short idea, advice, help?
Sure. Girona has a fantastic university. That's the basis of an intelligent city. Okay. Now, that university should be incorporated much more in the development of smart city initiatives. That's my first recommendation. Second, it's not only the city in itself. The city is part of a broader network. Of course, Big Brother Barcelona is around the corner. But it's not only a threat, it's also an opportunity. But that also means you have to go for smart specialization, because otherwise you cannot win the battle against Big Brother. But I see quite a few opportunities there. And in the long run, perhaps I would be more optimistic about the future of Girona than on the future of Barcelona.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.